It is great to see you on this 15th day of January. Yes, 15 days we have been reading the Bible together. And I just want to pause for just a second before I start into the lesson and give you a little bit of encouragement. If you have missed a day or two, it is okay. If you are behind a day in your reading or two, it is okay. Please remember that it is about persistence, not about perfection. God does not have a big demerit board in heaven that says, yeah, she missed those 2 days, so I can't count her as faithful. All right? Hang in there. If you can go back and make up those days, that's fine. If you can't, that's fine too. There is no demerit board in heaven that is counting off the fact that you might have missed a day or you're a day behind. Please hang in there with us. Hang in there. And if you get lagging behind and you've kind of lost your mojo, email us. Email me at wendy@wendypope.org, or go on our Facebook page and say, hey guys, I need prayer. I'm having a hard time. My little one's sick, or I've got a project due at work, or I'm overwhelmed. You're not alone. You're not alone, and there's people that have been here, done that, and we can encourage you. So please hang in there, and get just stay on that path. And if you get so many days behind, you're going to really get overwhelmed. So if you're 3 or 4 days behind, just pick up on today and move forward, and make a little note somewhere, maybe in your journal. Your page will be blank in your journal, so you'll know you'll miss those days. So you can go back and fill those in another time if you get to them. I know there was one year that my mom was sick and my dad was sick, and I missed like 6 or 7 days in a row. And those pages are blank in my journal. But you know what? God didn't get mad at me. He didn't stop loving me. He wasn't unfaithful to me. He stayed faithful to me. So life happens and it's okay. So I want to encourage you just to hang in there. So we're going to take a look at Joseph today and his predicament and where we find him. He, at the end of our reading yesterday, got in a little situation with Miss Potiphar, and he held his ground. He did the right thing. Unfortunately, doing the right thing, you still can end up in prison. At least he was in Potiphar's prison. He was there in the palace. He was close by. So I guess if you want to say he was in the best possible place that you could be, but he was still in prison. Remember, this is the dreamer. This is the one that God gave these visions to. And he was doing all the right things. It looked like he was walking up the ladder, and he was getting all these, maybe you want to call them promotions, and then all of a sudden Miss Potiphar decided she wanted a little of that action, and he wasn't going to have anything to do with that action, and it landed him in jail. So this is kind of where I want to go with this, is, you know, sometimes we are imprisoned. Maybe there's someone listening today that is actually in a physical prison. I pray that if that is the case, that this is an opportunity for God to really minister to you and to speak to your heart and to love on you through the study of His Word. But maybe some of you have been in a physical prison and are out now, but maybe some of you have not ever been in a physical prison, but you have been in an emotional prison, or maybe a financial prison, or you have been in a place of waiting for God to do something, because this was not part of Joseph's plan ever. And of course, this is not a plan that that anybody would choose for themselves. His brothers started all of this, and here he is in prison. And sometimes we're in a place of isolation. Sometimes we're in a place of contention. Sometimes we're in a place of accusation, and we aren't able to escape. And we do what God wants us to do, but yet we're still waiting for God to intervene on our behalf. We're in this place of waiting. And Joseph is a great example of that. And I actually have a lesson on Joseph in, you know what? I have it right here. My goodness. I didn't even realize that until I just now said it. A copy of my Wait and See curriculum. This curriculum is about 6 people who did or did not wait well in the Bible. And it has a DVD lessons to go with it. But there's a lesson in here on Joseph. And he is an example of a person that I wrote of that waited well. He really did a good job of waiting well. And I want to just look at this first part of our reading today in Genesis 40 about what it looks like when we're waiting for God to respond to our prayers. Not hear our prayers, because he hears our prayers, but we're waiting on him to respond to our prayers and to our situation. When we are waiting for God to respond to our situation, what can we learn from Joseph? We can see that Joseph continued to please God instead of being mad at God. I don't know about you guys, but I can be in a positive mood and try to please God for a little bit. And sometimes after that, often, not sometimes, but often after that little bit, I've had enough and I'm ready for God to do something. The bandwidth of my patience is longer in some situations than others. But there are times when I just gonna get a little irritated with God and say, "Yo, hey, me, do you see what's going on down here?" But Joseph remained positive with God, and we know this because at the end of yesterday's reading it says, "But the Lord was with Joseph in prison and showed him his faithful love." So Joseph, he was pleasing God, because we know that because it says God was with him. God's not going to hang around somebody that's not faithful to him. He'll be faithful to him, but he's not going to be intimately involved in somebody's life that doesn't want him to be intimately involved. He'll give them that common grace, and he'll give them that grace of, okay, you can live, I'm going to let you breathe. That's that common grace of just living and surviving in everyday life in this earth. But then you've got this unmerited favor that God gives us, those that are faithful to him, when we are faithful to him, gives us that unmerited grace that's more than the common grace. And that's what we see here. This is more than common grace. This is given faithful love to a man who is staying faithful to his God. And it says over in verse 23 at the end of yesterday's reading as well, the Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. God's not going to bless someone that is not being faithful to him. So we know that Joseph continued to please God. And when we're in that place of waiting, as hard as it is, look how hard it was for him in prison, he continued to strive to please God. Joseph also shows us that we need to continue to have a positive attitude. We know that he had a positive attitude by the way that he treated people. You know, there's times that we can just lash out on people when we're not happy with ourselves and our situation, and God doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. We can be hateful to people and snap their heads off like a snapping turtle. But Joseph also, not only maintaining a positive attitude, he showed compassion for people. He noticed. He says, "Why do you look worried today?" He asked the baker and the cupbearer. "Why do you seem worried today?" Which meant he was in tune with their attitudes and their actions enough to know that something was off. Wow. He continued to show compassion. And he spent his days in prison doing what he knew to do, and that is interpret dreams. That was his gift. Even though he was waiting, he continued to use his gifts that God gave him, and he interpreted dreams. They eventually led to his release. But had he not, this is just entering my mind, had he not continued to do what he knew to do, using those gifts that God gave him, would he have gotten out of prison? The cupbearer, the baker, they would have never borne witness to the gift of dream interpretation if he had just gotten mad and sat over in a corner and acted bitter and ugly and didn't care about anybody. Wow. That's a great thought. But Joseph also remained hopeful. And we have to do that when we wait well. Waiting well remains hopeful. Because he tells the cupbearer, he says, and remember me and do a favor. He says, make sure that you tell Pharaoh about me. Make sure that you tell Pharaoh about me. Now, he didn't. He didn't give him another thought. But he remained hopeful that he would one day be released. That God would one day respond. Waiting well teaches us to trust God's ways rather than doubt his delays. Let me repeat that. Waiting well teaches us to trust God's ways rather than to doubt his delays. Because his delays are for our good. And we will see that in Joseph's story. That it works out not only for Joseph's good, but for the good of his entire family and for the entire tribe, every tribe of Israel. We'll see you tomorrow on Read Through the Word.